The ICO's reported that it received 30,000 more calls in the last quarter compared to the previous 3 months, and that data protection complaints are up 23%. It's also been running a Data Matters campaign aimed at individuals. How do you feel that this increasing public awareness of data protection is now shaping the compliance approach for businesses?
I think the level of public interest in GDPR has been quite interesting and certainly is having an impact on how businesses have undertaken and looked at their GDPR compliance in the days since 25th of May. You mentioned the campaigns that have been run by the ICO. We've also seen things like Cambridge Analytica, which have undoubtedly raised awareness and interest in data protection matters. And they've also caught the eye of businesses who have taken into account how the ICO has responded to Cambridge Analytica and the steps it's taken, and have also led to more individuals actually looking to exercise their rights, and companies have started to have to get to grips with the practicalities of dealing with subject access requests, breach notification and the like, which is something that has really brought home to them the realities of what life under GDPR is like.
Yes. And the risks of not complying with the GDPR have been very well publicised. Obviously, there's an increased fine regime of up to €20 million or 4% of annual worldwide turnover. Do you feel that that increased risk to businesses is changing their approach to how much personal data they handle and keep in practice?
It's interesting. I think if you speak to some businesses, they have had a historic approach of keeping data is good. We don't know when we might need it, we don't know what we might want to use it for in the future, but generally let's hang on to it. And in part that's been driven by the fact that actually understanding what data you've got and indeed getting rid of it has also been quite hard. What we're now seeing, certainly with some clients, is a change of mindset where people are beginning to understand that historical legacy data equates to liability. And actually they're looking much more urgently and more fervently at how they can discard data that they don't really need, because they're beginning to recognise that that's more of a millstone around their neck than a business benefit they can leverage in the future.
What do you think businesses are now focusing on 100 days on since the GDPR came into effect?
In our experience, a lot of businesses didn't get everything done before 25th of May that they might have ideally liked. And a lot of them focused on the external facing aspects of compliance, whether that be their privacy notices, their arrangements with third parties, or how they promote their message of data compliance externally. And what we're seeing now is a lot of businesses are turning their focus on some of the more internal aspects, such as accountability. How do they actually demonstrate accountability under the accountability principles of GDPR? Do they have the internal policies, the training in place? While it's fair to say that some companies and clients do, it's also, I think, fair to say that others are still working on those aspects. And that flows through more broadly. We also see things like privacy by design, the need to undertake privacy impact assessments as relatively new things for a lot of organisations, and things that they're only starting to embed in their organisation at this stage. I mentioned earlier the issue around practicalities. I think as well it's been a bit of an eye-opener for some businesses as to what rights data subjects have actually sought to exercise and actually the practical implications of complying with those requests. It's easy to talk before the 25th of May in theory about what that might involve, but very different when you actually have to implement it in practice for real.
So the GDPR is intended, or was intended, to harmonise data protection laws across Europe. Do you feel that the GDPR has achieved that aim, and has it taken the compliance burden of international businesses having to comply with varying rules in different member states?
It would be nice to think that that has been the case, and undoubtedly there has been a greater degree of harmonisation of the law, and that has been helpful. However, what we've also seen is that a number of countries around Europe still haven't implemented their local laws supplementing GDPR, and that where those local laws do exist, then they have adopted variations from GDPR to perhaps in some cases a greater extent than we might have ideally hoped for. So while yes, GDPR has made international compliance easier, it hasn't unfortunately made it a one-size-fits-all approach everywhere. And in some respects I think it's too early to tell as to precisely where where and how that will work out. We're talking now 100 days after GDPR. I think if we look, say, 1 or 2 years in, we'll have a much better picture at that stage of whether the international harmonisation aspect of GDPR has worked as effectively as we might have wished.
Yeah, so but for the current time being, still a bit of a compliance burden for international businesses.
Unfortunately, more of a burden, I think, than a benefit, yes.
Yeah, there is still a lot of uncertainty, as you say, around compliance and how far a business needs to go, and guidance hasn't been that quick to come out. What would your advice be for businesses in terms of what they ought to be prioritising now? What's likely to attract the attention of a supervisory authority if things go wrong?
Well, I think a really key thing to remember is that GDPR is for life, not just for the 25th of May. And we're certainly seeing that the approach being taken by the regulators, and we expect it to evolve as the law beds in and develops. So it's important not to think, well, I've done the 25th of May, I've got my compliance done, and therefore I can sort of put it all to one side. GDPR compliance is a living, breathing obligation, and things will need to evolve over time. That said, where we expect and where we have for now seen most interest is certainly in areas like direct marketing, which of course is covered by more than just GDPR, how to react to requests from data subjects, dealing with breaches, and also certainly a focus of the ICO in the UK has been training and how you can assure that you've got accountability sorted out. I think the other thing that we're seeing indications will be of interest is where you're undertaking high-risk processing and you haven't got a privacy impact assessment process in place. Then we think that is an area where some clients will come unstuck, because we do think it will be an area of focus from the regulators.
Great, thanks very much, Mark. There's been some really interesting insights.